My name is Amanda Walker, 34 years old, and I built my marketing agency from nothing, while somehow becoming my family's financial backbone. I was in the middle of a client pitch when my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Do not come to the family reunion. We are cutting ties." My stomach dropped, but I simply replied, "Understood." Then I made a call to my bank and removed my name from the $2.5 million loan that was keeping my family's business afloat. As I share what happened in the 36 hours that followed, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston, the oldest of 3 children. From the beginning, I was the responsible one. My parents, Harold and Catherine Walker, cared deeply about appearances. Our house was always spotless when guests came over, but behind closed doors things were messier. My father worked long hours at his construction company, which had been passed down from his father. My mother maintained her position in the local garden club and charity organizations, always dressed impeccably with her pearls and perfectly styled hair. My brother James, 2 years younger than me, was the golden child. Athletic, charming, and carefree, he could talk his way out of any trouble. My sister Stephanie, 5 years my junior, was the baby of the family, protected and coddled. I was the one in the middle, not special enough to be the only son, or cute enough to be the baby girl. Instead, I was reliable Amanda, the one who helped Mom with dinner, who tutored her siblings, who never caused problems. When I was 14, I found my father at the kitchen table late one night, surrounded by papers, his head in his hands. I asked what was wrong, and after initial hesitation, he explained that the business was struggling. That night marked the beginning of my role as the family fixer. I stayed up with him learning about accounts receivable and cash flow problems. I started organizing his invoices after school. By 16, I was essentially managing the office administrative work while maintaining straight A's. "You have a good head for business, Amanda," my father would say, the closest thing to praise I ever received from him. My college decision was practical. I studied business administration with a focus on marketing. While my friends partied on weekends, I drove home to help with the family business. When James needed money for his car repairs, I dipped into my savings. When Stephanie wanted the expensive prom dress, I worked extra shifts at my campus job to help out. After graduating with honors, I turned down a job offer from a prestigious firm in New York to stay in Boston and help stabilize the family business. My father had never been good with modernization, and his approach was becoming outdated. I created a digital marketing strategy, revamped their brand, and brought in new clients. Within 2 years, Walker Construction was thriving again. "What would we do without you, Amanda?" my mother would say, not really expecting an answer because the truth was uncomfortable. They would probably fail. I finally started my own marketing agency at 27. I worked 18-hour days building my client list while still keeping an eye on the family business. My own company, Pinnacle Marketing, grew rapidly. I had a talent for understanding what businesses needed and how to position them in the market. 3 years ago, my father called me in a panic. A major development project required a substantial loan, but the bank was hesitant given the company's previous financial instability. Without thinking twice, I agreed to co-sign the loan for $2.5 million. It was supposed to be temporary, just until the project was underway and showing profits. "Just 6 months," my father promised. "Then, we will refinance and get you off the paperwork." That 6 months stretched to a year, then 2, then 3. Every time I brought it up, there was a new excuse. The project had delays. The economy was uncertain. The timing was not right. Meanwhile, I continued paying for family vacations when my parents complained they could not afford them. I covered James's rent when he lost his job. I paid for Stephanie's wedding when my parents said their budget was tight due to business investments. "Family takes care of family," my mother would remind me whenever I hesitated. And I believed that. I truly did. The problem was that it only seemed to work in one direction. I never complained. I was the dependable daughter, the successful one who had it all together. No one needed to worry about Amanda. No one needed to ask if Amanda needed help or support. Amanda was fine. Amanda was always fine. But the truth was, I was exhausted. I had built a successful business, maintained a perfect credit score, and achieved financial independence, all while carrying the weight of my family's needs on my shoulders. I just did not know yet how to put down that burden without feeling like I was betraying the people I loved. The last 5 years had been transformative for me professionally. Pinnacle Marketing had grown from a one-woman operation in my apartment to a team of 22 talented professionals with offices in downtown Boston. We specialized in digital transformation for traditional businesses, and our reputation for delivering results had earned us a waitlist of clients. My personal growth had been slower. It took a panic attack during a client meeting for me to finally seek help. My therapist, Diane Lewis, became the first person to really ask me why I continued to prioritize my family's needs above my own. You are not responsible for the financial security of your entire family, Amanda, she would tell me during our weekly sessions. You are enabling patterns that harm both you and them. I started small, setting boundaries around my time. No more dropping everything when my mother called with a family emergency that usually involved my father forgetting to pay a bill or James needing a ride because he had lost his license after his second DUI. I stopped accepting midnight calls from Stephanie when she and her husband Brian had fought, especially when those fights were about money and inevitably ended with hints about how I could help. The pushback was immediate and intense. I gave birth to you, and you cannot spare 15 minutes to help your mother. My mom's guilt trips were Olympic level. Some daughter you are, my father would mutter when I said I could not review contracts on Sunday, my only day to myself. The real trouble started when James developed a gambling problem. He had always been reckless with money, but online poker took it to a new level. He showed up at my condo at 2 a.m, tearful and desperate, saying he owed $20,000 to people who were not patient about repayment. For the first time in my life, I said no. I will help you find a Gamblers Anonymous meeting and a financial counselor, I told him. But I am not giving you money. He stormed out, calling me selfish and heartless. The next day, my parents called me, furious that I would abandon my brother in his time of need. He will never learn if we keep bailing him out, I tried to explain. He could be in danger, my mother cried. Is that what you want? In the end, they remortgaged their house to pay his debt. When I pointed out that this was just enabling him, they suggested that my success had made me cold. My sister Stephanie was another source of tension. She had married Brian Preston, a real estate agent who spent more than he earned trying to look successful. They lived in a house they could not afford, drove luxury cars with enormous payments, and took vacations they put on credit cards. Stephanie had always been jealous of my success, but it had become more pronounced recently. Not everyone can be perfect, like Amanda, she would say, at family dinners, her voice sweet, but edged with resentment. Some of us have to struggle. The irony that her struggles were largely self-created was lost on her, as was the fact that I had worked through college and sacrificed my 20s to build my business. The annual family reunion at my parents' lake house had been approaching. It was always a 3-day affair with extended family, a tradition started by my grandparents. This year, I had initially planned to attend despite my therapist's suggestion that I might consider taking a break from family obligations. You wince every time you talk about this reunion, Diane had pointed out. What would happen if you simply did not go this year? The thought had been both terrifying and liberating. I had never missed a family event, not even when I had pneumonia 2 years ago, and still dragged myself to Thanksgiving dinner. My best friend Tara Wilson had been even more direct. They treat you like an ATM with legs, she said over coffee. When was the last time any of them asked about your life or your business, without it eventually turning into a request for help? I could not remember. My boyfriend Patrick Gallagher had been supportive but concerned. We had been dating for a year, and he had witnessed the toll my family's demands took on me. After a Sunday dinner where my father had spent 20 minutes criticizing my business decisions, then asked me to look over some contracts for him, Patrick had finally spoken up. "You deserve better than this, Amanda," he said on the drive home. "You are remarkable, and they treat you like you owe them everything while they owe you nothing." I had defended them automatically the way I always did. "They are family. It is complicated." "It is not that complicated," he had replied. "Respect should be a two-way street." As the reunion approached, the family group chat had been filled with assignments. My mother expected me to handle the catering as usual. My father wanted me to prepare a presentation about tax strategies for the family business. James needed a ride because his car was in the shop again. Stephanie wanted me to bring activities for her kids because Auntie Amanda always has the best ideas. Not once did anyone ask if these requests worked for me or if I needed anything. It was just expected that I would handle it all as always. I had been considering Diane's suggestion to miss the reunion this year, but had not quite worked up the courage to announce it. In truth, I was afraid of the fallout, afraid of disappointing them, afraid of the guilt that had been programmed into me since childhood. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. That Tuesday started like any other. I arrived at the office early to prepare for an important client meeting. We were pitching to Hartman Industries, a potential account that would increase our annual revenue by 20%. I had spent weeks preparing with my team, refining our strategy until it was flawless. 10 minutes before the Hartman executives were due to arrive, my phone buzzed. Normally, I would have ignored it, but we were still waiting on some final numbers from our research department, so I glanced down. It was a text from my father. "Do not come to the family reunion. We are cutting ties. Your attitude and selfishness have become too much. We cannot keep walking on eggshells around you. It is better for everyone if you stay away. This is a family decision." I read it twice, my hand trembling slightly. A cold feeling spread through my chest. After everything I had done, after all the sacrifices, the loans, the free work, the emotional support, they were cutting me off like I was nothing. I took a deep breath and typed the only response I could manage. "Understood." Then I put my phone on silent, plastered on my professional smile, and walked into the conference room to deliver the best pitch of my career. Somehow, I made it through the 90-minute presentation without revealing that my world was crumbling. The Hartman team was impressed, asking all the right questions. My staff later told me I was brilliant, never suspecting the turmoil beneath my composed exterior. As soon as the meeting ended, I retreated to my office and called Patrick. "They cut me off," I said when he answered, my voice surprisingly steady. "My father just texted that I am not welcome at the reunion, that they are cutting ties with me." "What? Why?" Patrick sounded as shocked as I felt. "Apparently I am selfish. I have an attitude. They cannot walk on eggshells around me anymore." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Walking on eggshells. As if I have ever asked them for anything. "I am coming over," he said immediately. "No, I am fine. I have back-to-back meetings all afternoon." The numbness was setting and protecting me. "Amanda, this is not something you should just push down and ignore." "I am not," I assured him. "But I need to process this first. Can we talk tonight?" He reluctantly agreed, and I hung up. As I sat at my desk staring out at the Boston skyline, a realization hit me with startling clarity. If they were cutting ties with me, I needed to protect myself. And there was one enormous $2.5 million reason to be concerned. I was still a co-signer on my father's business loan. A loan that gave me significant legal and financial liability, but no control over how the money was spent. A loan that I had been trying to get my name off of for years. I called Grace Thompson, my financial advisor, and explained the situation. "Can I remove myself from the loan without my father's consent?" I asked. "That depends on the terms," Grace said. Send me the paperwork and let me review it. But Amanda, if you do this, there will be consequences. The bank might require immediate refinancing or could call in the loan. I understand, I said, but I need to protect myself. While waiting for Grace's assessment, I did my own research. The loan agreement had a clause allowing any cosigner to remove themselves with 30 days' notice, though doing so would trigger a review of the loan terms. My father had never wanted me to know this, which is why he always made excuses when I brought up refinancing. Grace confirmed my findings 2 hours later. You can submit a removal request to the bank, she said. But Amanda, this will likely create a financial crisis for your family's business. Are you prepared for that? They just told me they are cutting ties with me, I replied. I think the real question is whether they were prepared for the consequences of that decision. I left work early and went directly to my bank where I met with Linda Fisher, the loan officer who had helped set up the original agreement. I explained the situation calmly, presenting the relevant documentation. This is unusual, Linda admitted. Typically, both parties agree to changes in loan structure. The agreement specifically allows for unilateral withdrawal with notice, I pointed out. I am exercising that right. After reviewing the paperwork and making several phone calls, Linda confirmed that I could indeed remove myself from the loan. She helped me complete the necessary forms explaining that the bank would notify the primary loan holder and begin a review process. Your father will be informed of your withdrawal within 24 hours, she explained, and the bank will schedule a meeting to discuss refinancing options. Thank you, Linda, I said, signing the final document. My hand was steady, my resolve firm. As I left the bank, I felt lighter than I had in years. For once, I had put myself first. I was not being vindictive. I was protecting myself from a family that had just declared they no longer wanted me in their lives. Why should I remain financially entangled with people who had discarded me so easily? I drove home in a strange state of calm. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a clarity I had never experienced before. Years of therapy with Diane had prepared me for this moment, though neither of us had expected the breaking point to come in quite this way. At home, I poured myself a glass of wine, and finally allowed myself to really look at my father's text again. The words family decisions stood out, so they had discussed this, all of them. They had sat around and decided I was no longer worth having in their lives despite everything I had done for them. Or perhaps because of it. Perhaps my recent attempts at setting boundaries had threatened the comfortable dynamic where they took and I gave. I turned off notifications on my phone. Whatever fallout was coming, I would deal with it tomorrow. Tonight I needed to process the fact that I had been excommunicated from my own family. Patrick came over that evening with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. I had not realized how hungry I was until the aroma of pad thai and green curry filled my apartment. We ate on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over Boston. Have you checked your phone? He asked cautiously. I turned off notifications after I left the bank. I took a sip of wine. I removed myself from Dad's business loan today. Patrick's eyebrows shot up. Wow, that is a big move. They made a big move first, I pointed out. If they want to cut ties, it should be a clean break. I cannot remain financially liable for a business I now have no connection to. He nodded slowly. How are you feeling about all this? I considered the question carefully. Strangely peaceful. Like I have been carrying this enormous weight for so long that I forgot what it felt like not to have it, and now it is gone. We spent the evening talking about everything except my family. Patrick told me about his latest architectural project. We watched a documentary about deep-sea creatures, and for a few hours I felt almost normal. When I finally checked my phone before bed, I saw 3 missed calls from my father, all within an hour of bank closing time. He had not left any messages. I put my phone on silent and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, reality crashed back in. I woke to find 27 missed calls. 15 from my father, 7 from my mother, 3 from James, and 2 from Stephanie. There were also a dozen text messages and several voicemails. I made coffee before listening to any of them, fortifying myself for what was to come. The first voicemail was from my father, his voice tight with anger. "What the hell do you think you are doing? Call me immediately." The second from my mother, "Amanda, your father is very upset. Whatever point you are trying to make, this is not the way. Call us back." James was more direct. "You selfish witch. Do you have any idea what you have done? Dad could lose everything." Stephanie's message dripped with fake concern. "Amanda, we are all worried about you. This behavior is so unlike you. Are you having some kind of breakdown?" The texts followed the same pattern, ranging from demands to guilt trips to thinly veiled threats. Not one of them acknowledged that they had cut me off first. Not one considered that I might be protecting myself after their rejection. While I was reviewing these messages, my phone rang again. It was the family accountant, Frank Daniels. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Amanda, thank God," he said, sounding genuinely relieved. "I have been trying to reach you." "Good morning, Frank," I replied calmly. "What can I do for you?" "The bank called Walter Construction yesterday afternoon," he explained, referring to my father's business by its official name. "They are requiring a meeting to discuss the loan status following your withdrawal as cosigner. Your father is... well, he is not taking it well." "I imagine he is not," I said. "But this should not come as a complete surprise. I have been asking to be removed from that loan for 3 years. Frank sighed heavily. "Amanda, you know, I cannot get involved in family matters, but as the company's accountant, I have to tell you this creates significant financial challenges. The bank is likely to require new terms, possibly higher interest rates or accelerated payments." "I understand that," I said. "And I am sorry you have been put in this position, Frank. But my father made it clear that we are no longer family, so it would be inappropriate for me to remain financially entangled with his business." There was a long pause before Frank spoke again. He said that you are no longer family. He texted yesterday to tell me not to come to the reunion because they are cutting ties with me. His words, not mine. Another pause. "I see," Frank finally said. "That changes things. I was not aware of that aspect of the situation." After we hung up, I got ready for work, trying to maintain my normal routine despite the chaos. On my way to the office, the bank called to confirm they had processed my withdrawal request and had contacted the primary loan holder. By noon, the count of missed calls had reached 42. I had silenced my phone completely, focusing on work and the clients who depended on me. My assistant, Natalie Parker, fielded calls from my family members who tried reaching me through the office, following my instructions to say I was unavailable. "Your brother called you a name I would rather not repeat," Natalie informed me after one such call. "Should I be concerned?" "No," I assured her. "Family drama. Nothing to worry about." Just after lunch, my parents showed up at my office. I was in a meeting when the receptionist called to inform me they were in the lobby demanding to see me. "Tell them I am in meetings all afternoon and cannot be interrupted," I instructed. 20 minutes later, Natalie knocked on my office door. "Your parents are making a scene in reception," she said apologetically. "Security is asking if they should escort them out." I closed my eyes, briefly embarrassed that my professional space was being invaded by this drama. "Yes, please have security escort them out." "And Natalie, I am sorry about this." "No need to apologize," she said with a sympathetic smile. "We all have family." Not anymore, I thought, but did not say. By the end of the workday, the situation had escalated further. My email inbox contained messages from my father's lawyer, veiled threats about financial sabotage and breach of family trust. As if family trust was something that could be legally enforced. When I finally returned to my apartment that evening, I found Stephanie waiting in the lobby. She looked smaller somehow, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "We need to talk," she said, moving to block my path to the elevator. "I do not think we do," I replied. "Dad made the family position quite clear yesterday." "That was before you went nuclear," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you have done? The bank is threatening to call in the loan if Dad cannot find another cosigner or put up additional collateral." "That sounds like a business problem," I said, stepping around her. "One that no longer concerns me." She followed me to the elevator. "He will lose the business, Amanda. The business that Grandpa built. Is that what you want?" I turned to face her, suddenly tired of the manipulation. What I wanted was to be treated with basic respect by my family. What I wanted was acknowledgement of all I have contributed over the years. What I wanted was not to be discarded via text message after a lifetime of support. But we do not always get what we want, do we? The elevator arrived and I stepped in. Stephanie tried to follow, but I held up my hand. "Oh, number, you do not get to come into my home after what happened. Not today. Dad said he will let you come to the reunion if you reinstate the loan," she said desperately, as the doors began to close. "He will take you back." I laughed, genuinely amused by the absurdity. Take me back, like he is doing me a favor. Goodbye, Stephanie. As the doors closed on her shocked face, I leaned against the elevator wall, exhaustion washing over me. By my count, there had been 78 missed calls by now, spread across my family members, the family lawyer, and the increasingly panicked accountant. The truth was becoming clear. They had never expected me to stand up for myself. They had assumed I would beg to be allowed back into the fold, that I would do anything to maintain connections they clearly did not value. They had not anticipated that their rejection would free me to protect myself. For the first time, I was seeing the true nature of our relationship. It had never been about family. It had been about utility. My utility to them. And now that I had dared to set boundaries, to ask for respect, I had become disposable. Except, of course, for my financial support, which they still felt entitled to. The irony was not lost on me. By the morning of the second day, the total missed call count had reached 78. My voicemail was full, and the text messages had become increasingly desperate. My father had progressed from anger to threats to something approaching panic. My mother's messages oscillated between guilt trips about my father's health and promises that we could work things out if I would just be reasonable. I arrived at the office to find James waiting for me in the parking garage, leaning against my reserved spot sign. He straightened as I pulled in, his face set in what he probably thought was an intimidating expression. "You need to fix this," he said as I got out of my car. "Good morning to you too, James," I replied, walking past him toward the elevator. He followed, grabbing my arm. "Do you think this is a joke? Dad had to cancel the development project. Contractors are threatening to sue for breach of contract." I removed his hand from my arm. "Do not touch me again. And no, I do not think it is a joke. I think it is the natural consequence of how this family has treated me." "What are you talking about? We have always supported you." I stared at him, genuinely amazed by his selective memory. "Name one time, James. One single time when any of you supported me without eventually asking for something in return." He opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly struggling. "That is what I thought," I said, turning away. "The bank called in the loan," he blurted out. "Dad has 30 days to refinance or pay in full. $2.5 million. He does not have it." I stopped walking but did not turn around. "That is unfortunate." "Unfortunate. That is all you have to say. This is our family legacy." I turned to face him. "A legacy you were happy to exclude me from just 2 days ago. You cannot have it both ways, James. You cannot tell me I am not family, and then expect me to carry the family's financial burdens." Security approached before he could respond, 2 guards flanking us. "Is everything all right, Miss Walker?" one asked, eyeing James warily. My brother was just leaving, I said firmly. James looked between the guards, then back at me. This is not over, he warned, before stalking away. Would you like us to escort you to your office, Miss Walker? The guard asked. Yes, thank you, I replied, suddenly aware of how shaken I felt. By mid-morning, Frank the accountant had called 3 more times. On his 4th attempt, I finally answered. Amanda, I need to speak with you in person, he said, his voice strained. This is beyond a simple disagreement. The financial implications are severe. I am busy today, Frank. Please, he said, and something in his tone made me pause. There are things you should know. Things about the business finances that might explain why your father reacted so strongly. My curiosity was piqued. I can give you 15 minutes at 4 this afternoon. Frank arrived at my office precisely at 4, looking like he had aged years in the past 2 days. His normally impeccable suit was wrinkled, and he carried a thick folder of documents. Thank you for seeing me, he said, as he took a seat across from my desk. 15 minutes, I reminded him, setting a timer on my phone. He nodded, opening the folder. Amanda, I have been the Walker construction accountant for 22 years. Your grandfather hired me, and I stayed on when your father took over. I have always tried to maintain professional ethics while being loyal to the family. And I appreciate that, I said, but I fail to see what this has to do with the current situation. The loan you co-signed, he continued, was not just for the development project your father told you about. A significant portion went to cover existing debts and personal expenses. I felt a cold sensation spreading through my chest. What kind of personal expenses? Frank looked uncomfortable. Your father has made some financial decisions that I advised against. Investments that did not pan out, personal purchases, loans to James that were written off as business expenses. How much? I asked quietly. Of the $2.5 million, approximately $1.2 million went to the actual development project. The rest. He slid a document across the desk. I scanned the page, my stomach tightening. There were transfers to personal accounts, payments for a vacation property in Florida. I had never heard about a boat, gambling debts labeled as entertainment expenses, and most damning of all, a $300,000 loan to James, marked as a business investment with no documentation or repayment terms. Why are you showing me this now? I asked, looking up from the paper. Frank shifted uncomfortably. Your father instructed me to never discuss these details with you despite your role as co-signer. I have been uncomfortable with that arrangement for some time. When he told me yesterday that he had cut you off from the family, then expected me to convince you to reinstate the loan, I realized I could not, in good conscience, continue to withhold this information. The timer on my phone chimed. 15 minutes were up, but I was nowhere near done with this conversation. Thank you for your honesty, Frank, I said, turning off the alarm. I would like to see everything. For the next hour, Frank walked me through the company's true financial state. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Walker Construction was being used as a personal piggy bank. My father had been siphoning off funds for years, categorizing personal expenses as business costs. The company was technically profitable, but cash flow problems were constant due to these financial irregularities. The development project was supposed to generate enough profit to cover the discrepancies, Frank explained. Your father planned to use the proceeds to replace some of the funds before anyone noticed the inconsistencies. Before I noticed, you mean, I said, since I am the one who would be liable if the loan defaulted. Frank nodded reluctantly. I suspect that is why he was so resistant to removing you as co-signer, and why he reacted so strongly when you set that boundary. And the family reunion, I asked. Why exclude me now after all these years? Frank hesitated. I cannot speak to family matters, but the annual financial review for the loan is next month. The bank would have required your presence, and signature on the updated documents. Documents that would have revealed these discrepancies. The pieces clicked into place. They had not cut me off because I was setting personal boundaries. They had cut me off because I was getting too close to discovering their financial manipulations. My father had planned to exclude me from the review process by cutting family ties while somehow maintaining my legal liability for the loan. It was breathtakingly cynical. I see, I said, my voice steady, despite the anger building inside me. Thank you for your honesty, Frank. I appreciate the professional risk you are taking. I should have spoken up sooner, he admitted. But I convinced myself it was not my place to interfere in family business. After Frank left, I sat at my desk for a long time processing what I had learned. My phone continued to buzz with incoming calls and messages, but I ignored them, focused on planning my next steps. Finally, at 6:30, I called my father. He answered immediately. Amanda, thank God. We need to talk about this bank situation. Yes, we do, I agreed. I just had a very interesting conversation with Frank. There was a moment of silence. Frank should not be discussing company finances with outsiders. Outsiders, I repeated. I was a co-signer on a $2.5 million loan until 2 days ago. A loan that you apparently used to fund personal expenses, James's gambling debts, and a secret vacation property in Florida. Another silence, longer this time. Frank had no right. Actually, as someone legally liable for that loan, I had every right to know how the money was being used. The fact that you deliberately hid this information from me is not just unethical, Dad. It might be illegal. Now you listen here, he began, his voice rising. No, you listen, I interrupted, surprising both of us. For years, I have supported this family emotionally and financially. I have given up opportunities, sacrificed my time, and put my own financial security at risk. And how do you repay me? By excluding me from a family gathering and trying to maintain my financial liability while cutting personal ties. Did you really think that would work? You do not understand the pressures I am under, he said, his tone shifting to one. I recognized, self-pity, designed to evoke sympathy and compliance. I understand perfectly, I replied. I understand that you used me, lied to me, and then discarded me when I was no longer useful or compliant. I understand that you never valued me as a daughter, only as a resource to be exploited. That is not fair. No, it is not fair. None of this has been fair. But it ends now. What does that mean? He asked, wariness creeping into his voice. It means I am done. The bank has accepted my withdrawal from the loan. What happens next with your business is your problem, not mine. I will let you come to the reunion, he offered, as if bestowing a great favor. We can put this unpleasantness behind us. I actually laughed. That is your response. To generously allow me back into the family I have financially supported for years. No, thank you. Amanda, be reasonable. We are family. No, Dad. You made it very clear we are not family. And for once I agree with you. Goodbye. I hung up, blocked his number, and did the same for my mother, James, and Stephanie. Then I called Patrick and asked him to come over. I needed someone who actually cared about me, not what I could do for them. The confrontation had left me shaking, but underneath the emotion was a steely resolve. For the first time, I saw my family clearly without the filters of obligation and guilt that had colored my perspective for so long, and I knew what I needed to do next. The next morning, I contacted Jennifer Morris, a lawyer who specialized in financial fraud and family business disputes. I forwarded her the documents Frank had provided and explained the situation. From what you have described, you have grounds for a civil complaint, Jennifer advised during our consultation. Your father appears to have misrepresented the purpose of the loan you co-signed, and there may be tax implications to how the money was used. I do not want to sue my family, I clarified. I just want to protect myself from any potential liability. Understandable, Jennifer said. Let me draft a formal letter outlining your position and the evidence of financial irregularities. Sometimes clear documentation of potential legal consequences is enough to prevent further harassment. While Jennifer worked on the legal documentation, I took additional steps to protect myself. I reviewed all my financial accounts and discovered something disturbing. My parents still had access to a savings account I had opened in college. I immediately closed the account and transferred the funds to a new bank entirely. I also changed all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication on my important accounts, and froze my credit. If my family was willing to exploit me financially once, they might try again. Patrick stayed with me that night, concerned about my emotional state and the possibility of more unwelcome visitors. His quiet support meant more than he could know. Here was someone who wanted nothing from me except my happiness and well-being. "I am proud of you," he said as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset. "Standing up to family is one of the hardest things to do." "I keep waiting to feel guilty," I admitted, "but all I feel is relief and anger and sad that it came to this." "Those are all valid feelings," he assured me. "You did not create this situation. You just finally stopped enabling it." The next day brought a formal letter from my father's attorney, Milton Green. It was filled with legal jargon about family business arrangements and implied contractual obligations. But the message was clear: they wanted me to reinstate my position as loan cosigner or face potential legal action. Jennifer responded with a detailed letter outlining the misuse of loan funds, complete with documentation provided by Frank. She also included a reminder that attempting to maintain my financial liability after explicitly ending family ties could be viewed as attempted fraud. "If your clients wish to pursue this matter," she concluded, "my client is prepared to provide full documentation to the lending institution regarding how the loan funds were actually used, which may trigger a fraud investigation." The threat of exposure was enough to change the tone dramatically. The next communication from Milton was much more conciliatory, suggesting a family meeting to resolve misunderstandings. I declined through Jennifer, making it clear that all communication should continue through our lawyers. If they wanted to discuss restructuring the business without my involvement, I was open to that conversation. Otherwise, there was nothing to discuss. A week after my father's initial text, I received an unexpected call from my Aunt Linda, my father's sister. Linda had always been the black sheep of the family, living in California and rarely attending family functions. I had always liked her, but had limited contact over the years. "Amanda, it is Aunt Linda. I hope it is okay that I called." "Of course," I said, surprised but pleased. "It is good to hear from you." "I heard what happened with your dad and the rest of them," she said directly. "Catherine called me trying to get me to talk some sense into you. But from what I can tell, you are the only one making sense in this whole mess." I laughed despite myself. "Thank you for saying that. It has been a difficult week." "I bet it has. Listen, there is something you should know. This is not the first time Harold has done something like this." "What do you mean?" Linda sighed. "Your father has a pattern of using people until they start asking questions, then cutting them off. He did it to me 20 years ago when I questioned some of his business practices. He did it to your Uncle Robert when he would not loan him money for a so-called investment opportunity. He even did it to his best friend from college when the man suggested he might have a gambling problem." "I had no idea," I said, though the pattern sounded painfully familiar. "You were just a kid when most of this happened," Linda said. "But I have watched from a distance as he molded you into the family fixer, the responsible one who would clean up everyone's messes. It was not right, but every time I tried to say something, I was shut down." We talked for nearly 2 hours. Linda filled in gaps in my understanding of family history, confirming suspicions I had harbored but dismissed. My father's business had nearly failed multiple times, saved by various relatives who were subsequently pushed away when they asked for repayment or accountability. "You lasted longer than most," Linda observed. Probably because you were his daughter and felt obligated, and because you were very good at fixing his problems. After speaking with Linda, I felt both validated and sad. The pattern was clear, and I was just the latest victim of my father's manipulative behavior. But understanding the history helped me resist the waves of guilt that occasionally threatened to overwhelm me. The hardest part was dealing with the flying monkeys, as Diane called them, people sent to make me reconsider my position. Distant relatives called to tell me how devastated my mother was. Family friends expressed concern about my mental health, suggesting I was having some kind of breakdown. Even my godmother, who I had always respected, reached out to suggest I was being too harsh. "Your father made mistakes, but he loves you," she insisted. "Loving someone means respecting their boundaries," I replied. "It means not using them and discarding them when they are no longer useful." "People in families use each other all the time," she argued. "That is what family is for." "Not like this," I said firmly. "And if that is what family means to you, then I am better off without it." Each conversation was draining, but each time I stood firm, I felt stronger. My therapist, Diane, helped me process the complex emotions, the grief for the family I thought. I had the anger at the manipulation, the relief of finally being free from the burden of unreasonable expectations. "You are mourning the loss of your family," Diane observed during one session. "But you are also mourning the loss of the person you thought you had to be for them. That is a profound transition." She was right. For so long, my identity had been tied to being the reliable one, the fixer, the provider. Who was I without those roles? It was both terrifying and exhilarating to discover the answer. Through it all, I maintained my professional obligations. Pinnacle Marketing landed the Hartman Industries account, a major victory that should have been celebrated with my family. Instead, I took my team out for a lavish dinner, thanking them for their support during a difficult personal time. As days turned into weeks, the calls and messages from my family became less frequent. The initial crisis passed as my father found other financial solutions, though, according to Frank, who still contacted me occasionally, those solutions involved selling assets and scaling back operations significantly. I maintained the boundaries I had established, focusing on my business, my relationship with Patrick, and my friendships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. It was a new way of living, one where I no longer carried the weight of an entire family's financial and emotional needs on my shoulders. And surprisingly, I found I could breathe more easily than I had in years. 1 month after the text that had changed everything, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant Natalie buzzed my intercom. "Amanda, your father is here to see you." I froze, my hand hovering over my keyboard. This was unexpected. After weeks of lawyers communicating back and forth, I had not anticipated a direct approach. "Did he say what he wants?" I asked. "Just that he needs to speak with you personally. Should I send him away?" I considered it. Part of me wanted to refuse to maintain the clean break I had established, but another part recognized that this might be an opportunity for closure. "Give me 5 minutes, then send him in." I used those 5 minutes to center myself, remembering Diane's advice about maintaining boundaries even in difficult conversations. When my father walked in, I was struck by how much older he looked. His normally commanding presence seemed diminished, his shoulders slightly stooped. "Amanda," he said, his voice gruff, "thank you for seeing me." "Have a seat," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. He sat awkwardly, placing a folder on his lap. "I came to apologize," he said after a moment. "The way I handled things, it was wrong." I waited, saying nothing. "The business is being restructured," he continued when I did not respond. "We had to sell some assets, scale back operations. It has been challenging." "I imagine it has," I said neutrally. He shifted uncomfortably. "Your mother misses you. We all do." "Do you?" I asked. "Or do you miss what I provided to the family?" He flinched slightly. That is not fair. Isn't it you cut me off, Dad? You told me I was no longer welcome in the family. Only after I protected myself financially did you seem to care about my absence. I was angry, he admitted. You had been pushing back, questioning decisions, refusing to help James. It felt like you were abandoning your responsibilities. My responsibilities, I repeated. Interesting choice of words. I did not realize that being your daughter came with financial obligations to support the entire family indefinitely. He looked down at his hands. I know how it sounds, but family is supposed to help each other. Help goes both ways, I pointed out. When was the last time you helped me? When was the last time you even asked if I needed anything? He had no answer for that. I built my business from nothing, I continued. I worked 18-hour days, took risks, made sacrifices, and all while continuing to support everyone else's dreams and bail out everyone else's mistakes. The least I deserved was basic respect. You are right, he said quietly, surprising me. I took you for granted. We all did. It was the first genuine acknowledgement I had ever heard from him, and it momentarily threw me off balance. I cannot change the past, he continued, but I am hoping we can find a way forward. Some kind of relationship, even if it is different from before. What kind of relationship do you envision? I asked cautiously. He opened the folder he had brought, revealing documents from the bank. I have refinanced the loan completely. Your name is officially removed from all company financial obligations. I wanted you to have the documentation. I accepted the papers, scanning them to confirm what he was saying. It appeared legitimate. My name was nowhere on the new loan agreement. Thank you, I said. This was the right thing to do. There is more, he said, pulling out another document. This is a repayment plan for the personal funds you have contributed to family expenses over the years. We calculated it as best we could. It will take time, but every penny will be repaid. This was truly unexpected. I reviewed the document, which listed various amounts I had contributed, from James's rent to Stephanie's wedding to family vacations. The total was substantial, over $150,000. This was not necessary, I said, though I was touched by the gesture. Yes, it was, he insisted. It is part of making amends. We talked for nearly an hour. The conversation was not easy, with difficult truths acknowledged on both sides. My father admitted to financial mismanagement and manipulative behavior. I acknowledged that I had enabled the situation by never setting firm boundaries. If we are to have any relationship moving forward, I said as our conversation wound down, things have to be different. I need respect, honesty, and appropriate boundaries. I understand, he said. I cannot promise I will get it right immediately. Old habits die hard. But I am willing to try. That is all I can ask, I replied. We did not hug when he left. We were not there yet. But there was a tentative peace, a foundation that might eventually support a healthier relationship. In the weeks that followed, I cautiously re-established contact with select family members. My mother called once a week, our conversations initially awkward, but gradually more genuine. Stephanie reached out with a heartfelt apology, admitting that she had been jealous of my success while benefiting from my generosity. I never really saw it from your perspective, she confessed over coffee. How much pressure you were under, how much you gave up for everyone else. James was the slowest to come around. His gambling problem had worsened during the family crisis, and he initially blamed me for his troubles. It was only after he entered a treatment program that he began to take responsibility for his own choices. Not everything was resolved. There were still tense moments, misunderstandings, and occasional relapses into old patterns. But the fundamental dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the family ATM or emergency problem solver. I was Amanda, a person with my own needs, boundaries, and limits. Meanwhile, my personal life flourished. Freed from constant family obligations, I had time to develop deeper friendships, explore new hobbies, and nurture my relationship with Patrick. We moved in together 6 months after the family rupture, creating a home that was a true haven, free from drama and manipulation. My business continued to thrive as well. Without the distraction of constant family crises, I could focus my energy on strategic growth. Pinnacle Marketing expanded to a second office in New York, and our client list included some of the most prestigious companies in the Northeast. The following summer, I hosted a gathering at my new home. It was not called a family reunion, but rather a celebration of new beginnings. The guest list included some family members who had demonstrated genuine change, as well as friends who had supported me through the difficult transition. Patrick's family was there too, warm and welcoming, in a way that still sometimes caught me by surprise. As I looked around at the diverse group of people enjoying themselves in my backyard, I realized that I had created something precious, a chosen family based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and guilt. My father approached me as I stood watching the gathering, a tentative smile on his face. "This is nice," he said. "Different from our traditional reunions, but nice." Yes, I agreed, built on a better foundation. He nodded, understanding the implication. "I am still learning," he admitted. "But I am grateful for the second chance." "Me too," I said, and meant it. The journey from that text message telling me not to come to the family reunion to this moment had been painful but necessary. I had lost the family I thought I had, but gained something more valuable: self-respect, clear boundaries, and relationships based on mutual care rather than exploitation. Sometimes understood is the most powerful word in the English language. It can mark the end of something toxic, but also the beginning of something authentic. My simple reply to my father's rejection had been the first step toward freedom, toward a life where I was valued for who I was, not what I could provide. As I look back on that pivotal moment, I am grateful for the text that finally pushed me to stand up for myself. Sometimes rejection is actually redirection to a better path. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the family you choose can be even more meaningful than the family you were born into.